I've heard the phrase adrenal glands before, but that's about all I know about it.
Most people don't realize what the adrenal glands are. They really don't. And it's your stress gland. So it's something that everybody has, is adrenals, and it's something that it does probably affect everybody at some time or another. You know, your adrenal glands respond to stress.
Well, they do that, and then the adrenal glands are a whole lot more complicated than just
exactly.
stress.
That's true.
I mean,
that's true.
You know, that's what everybody thinks about, and that's the stress gland and so on. But they're a hell of a lot more complicated than that. I mean, it really is. You know, you get into things like aldosterone controlling, say, sodium and potassium, et cetera, blood pressure, heart rate, all that stuff. Hormone production.
Blood sugar.
All
metabolism,
that. You name
metabolism.
It. Yeah.
It's all kind of controlled by those little bitty glands.
Yeah. They're about the size of your thumb.
Yep.
I mean, they really are small. And they sit right on top of your kidneys.
Top of the kidneys.
Got one on top of each one. And they just kind of do their thing. And they're constantly in communication with the brain, you know, and everything kind of working together. And the brain's telling them what to do based on certain parameters that it's looking at and so on. So it's really complicated stuff. But the thing that she's talking about stress, that's what we see the most of, and that's where we see the most questions.
Right. I mean, you have your frank adrenal diseases.
Yes.
And those they're more rare. They really are. I mean, we check adrenals on pretty much every panel.
Right.
And we don't have tons of people with the adrenal diseases. And unfortunately, medically, that's what is covered by your insurance, is if you have an adrenal disease. And your two pretty much common adrenal diseases that are on total opposite end of the spectrum is Cushing's, which is way too much cortisol. And when we talk about high cortisol, we're not talking, in Cushing's, it is way high. I mean, it is up there.
Yeah.
And then there's Addison's, which is none, adrenal failure. So those are the actual diseases. Now, Cushing's usually is caused by some sort of growth or tumor, you know, on the adrenal gland. Or even it can actually be something from the pituitary.
I was going to say the pituitary
and
is involved
the pituitary is the part of the brain that tells the adrenals what to do. So again, now that Cushing's has extreme symptoms. It is extreme weight gain. The hump on your back. It actually is the anxiety off the charts. It is, you know, there's something wrong, and the person knows there's something wrong.
Yeah, and that little hump, I remember in school, and they called it a dowager's hump. And I thought, okay, for one, what's a dowager? Old country boy went to school, he didn't know, but I'd never heard of a dowager before. You know, they see these little old ladies, and if they've got that problem, they're gonna have this big glob of fat right at the base of their neck, top of their shoulders. And
it's not your hump from being bent over and osteoporosis.
It's just
fat. It is a big glob of fat.
Yeah, and sure enough, I started looking around, and I'm thinking, dang, this is everywhere. There must be a lot of dowagers out there, you know? And, you know, I thought it was kind of interesting, but it just shows you how complicated this
But Cushing's is more rare.
Right, very rare.
I mean, Addison's I've seen quite a few times over the years, and it is absolute adrenal failure, which those people cannot gain weight. They are skinny as a rail, severe weight loss, can't get out of bed, so tired they can't get up. I mean, there's fatigue on both ends, but that one is where they just can't even get up. And then in severe cases, they start hyperpigmentation, where they start getting spots on them, brown spots and things like that. So Addison's is one that I can say we have seen, that we've diagnosed when everybody else missed it over the years. So I've actually seen we have seen quite a few Addisons. But then I have people that come in that are like 150 pounds overweight and say, my doctor thinks I have Addison's. And I'm like, I can look at you and tell you don't, because you're way too overweight. And in most of those cases, it's because the person took steroids, which temporarily makes you look like you have Addison's, but it was not Addison's. It was actually the steroids that caused it. So you have to, there's a lot of stuff to take into account, which is why people come see us, and we can look at the results and kind of, you know, look at them and tell. But I've had a lot, we deal with a lot of adrenal cases definitely daily. So those are the kind of extremes. We just want to tell you, so from now on, when we're talking about, you know, adrenal fatigue and adrenal overload, we're not talking about those diseases.
Right. So those are your extremes.
Those are.
What would individuals need to look for in significantly more minor cases than full-on adrenal disease?
Well, probably some of the simple stuff is that, as you mentioned, the fatigue.
Yes.
Because a lot of people come in and they're just totally wiped out, so to speak, fatigued. You check them out; they're not anemic.
Yeah.
'Cause that's usually the first thing you think about. Well, okay, maybe they're anemic. Check that. Nope, not anemic. So then, it's got to the point where we put on pretty much any of our bigger panels, especially from like our expanded panel up, we always check a spot cortisol and a DHEA, because there's looking at the adrenal cortex, and that's looking at your DHEA is about your ability to have hormones, to make testosterone, estrogen, so on, and then you look at your cortisol. Well, there's your stress profile right there. And it just kind of gives you an idea. And like I say, we see an awful lot of people on steroids come in, and you think, oh my God, they have a zero of everything. It's just not making anything, and it's because they've been on steroids.
Yeah, when you take a steroid, it tells your body that your adrenals don't need to work because it actually is working for them.
And they don't.
And even when the steroid is out of you, sometimes those adrenals don't come back like they're supposed to. So we actually see a lot. Now, other symptoms. On adrenals. Now, if you have too much adrenal, you tend to be that anxious tired. So tired, but so anxious.
Jittery.
High blood pressure, weight gain. The people definitely don't feel good. But that's kind of the big things we see is the weight gain and the high blood pressure and high blood sugar. Oh my gosh, it can make diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
If you have constantly cortisol higher than you should, it can lead to diabetes because it itself increases the blood sugar. So that's why I said it affects so much. Then when you get into the no adrenals, it's a tired, but it's a can't move tired. But just being adrenal fatigued can still make weight loss. I mean, not weight loss, weight gain, I'm sorry.
Right, yeah.
Addison's is weight loss, but the adrenal fatigue, even though it's low, you can still gain weight. So we can see weight gain in both areas.
It's amazing how such a small thing like that, well, of course, when you look at the pituitary gland, it's about the size of a normal pea, and it produces so many hormones. And the adrenals, they're a little bit bigger than the pea, but they produce so many different things. They control things like your sodium retention. How much salt do you keep in? I see an awful lot of people, because they produce aldosterone, which is all about that, and about setting your heart rate, things like that. So we see so many problems coming from that.
Well, I know this, I'm going to make sort of a little joke here. With the adrenals doing so much, we need to talk about adrenal fatigue. I know that probably doesn't correlate. But
Yes, it does.
they work, they get tired, I get tired.
They do,
Yeah,
and that's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it is.
do.
They
There you
get
go.
tired because people, get stress and then chronic stress. Now, your short-term stress, you want that cortisol spike. You want it to go up because that's what makes you stronger, faster, everything quick. It's long-term when it's elevated, or long-term elevation eventually makes fatigue, because they almost say, I'm tired of this, it ain't doing too well, I'm just going to stop making as much because it's not really doing very good making too much. So and then you get adrenal fatigue. And you mentioned sleep. Sleep is greatly affected by adrenals, both high and low. And a lot of the symptoms of adrenals, both high and low, are the same. Insomnia can be both ways. Fatigue is both ways. Weight gain can be both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many things that can be both. I have people that come in and say, I know I have too much cortisol. I even have people that have ordered stuff on the internet to lower their cortisol because they have too much cortisol and they're not getting any better. And that's when they finally come in and say, okay, we check it, they don't have any cortisol. And I'm like, no, you're going the wrong way with it. And this, so you can't just, because the symptoms are so similar, you can't just say, I think it's high or I think it's low, because you don't know. And again, we're not talking about low Addison's. That's totally different. That does have different symptoms. We're talking about just low normal and high normal. Mm-hmm. And that does make a difference. Medicine, of course, doesn't pay attention to it because insurance companies don't allow them to do anything to cover it. Because then it's about wellness, it's not about illness. And although long-term, having your adrenals off can make illness, because it can make you diabetic. It can make all kind of problems. If you don't sleep, that affects problems. It can affect cardiovascular, affects neurological, it affects everything. So, just like hormones. I mean, if they're off, it ain't going to kill you, but it's sure not going to make you feel good.
Right. And that's the thing. And we've gotten so accustomed to getting our MD from the University of
Yes.
World Wide Web.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and what I'm hearing is that when your adrenals are not functioning correctly, it spits off a host of symptoms that could be a myriad of other things.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
I have tons of people that come in that swear it's their thyroid. That's another thing that it mimics. They swear it's their thyroid. Now, thyroid and adrenals can go hand in hand because they affect each other and they affect hormones. So people think it's their hormones and it's their adrenals. So there's so many things out times where it's the adrenals and just your stress and inability to handle it. It is not the other problems that you're thinking. But you don't know how many people come in that they just know they have a problem and they've ordered all kind of stuff and it just ain't working.
Yeah.
Well, it ain't working because it ain't the problem. That's what we're always telling people. If you don't test it, like he always says, it's like just go and pour a quart of oil in your car if it don't need it. Okay, if it's not low oil, it's not going to help it.
And unfortunately,
I didn't even hurt it. I didn't even make it overrun. You know,
and unfortunately, medicine today has kind of got the idea of just let's put another quart of oil in there, because what they tend to do, patient comes in, they got all these symptoms and everything. The doc knows, okay, I can't even go down that road because insurance just blackballs me, and then I can't do anything. So they just say like, okay, well, the patients, they're showing signs and symptoms of depression. What do? Put them on an antidepressant. What happens? They get worse.
Yeah, so when you talk about depression or you can't sleep, just do a sleeping pill. If you can't do that, there's always just, and that does not fix the underlying problem. And adrenals, in today's world of stress, there's no doubt. I don't think anybody out there that can say they never have stress. I don't know how if they do.
If you
They're a
do,
special individual.
Every once in a while you
Very
find that
special.
clueless person and I'm like, actually, they probably are better off because
100%.
They're probably
183%.
better off. But
So when it comes to figuring out that it is your adrenals not functioning correctly, how do you test that?
the best test, we do the spot test, okay? Which
spot
gives you,
test is on all of our panels just because of cost.
Yeah.
Because it gives you an idea. And
Yeah.
then if you see a bad problem, then you can do more testing. But
Yeah, then you go into, one of our favorite tests to do for it, and it really paints the picture from wall to wall, and it's called an adrenal
Hormone stress
profile, right? And it's a saliva test, so you spit in these little tubes, and you think that's easy, but yeah,
It's really harder
It's
than
really
it
hard,
sounds.
okay. But anyhow, you do that from like early morning all the way to bedtime. Okay.
Right, because you
So
want to see the curve.
Right, you get to
Because-
see the
yeah.
chart, the graph, how it goes. Does
Because
it go
what
high?
adrenals are supposed to do, okay, you wake up in the morning and you're here. Within 30 minutes, you have what they call the cortical awakening response, which actually wakes you up. And it actually increases 50% of what you are, or it's supposed to, not everybody does, increases 50%. So you go from here to here. Well, that's the height. And then as the day goes on, it curves all the way down. When it gets real low at night, that's when you go to sleep. So when the cortisol stays high, you don't sleep. And if it stays too low all the time, then you're always tired. So that's why there's a graph. And so you can see why checking it once in a day does not always give you the full picture. So we like the test, and it's 6 different tests. It's actually a test 6 times during the day, and it gives you the exact times where you got to check it.
Yeah, and one of the things that we see, because the folks that have been on, Dr. Google, and they've been buying something up and going, ooh, I think I got that. Well, what they find when they do this test is they may be kind of like an adverse response to it. In other words, their cortisol may be very low in the morning, and yet later in the afternoon it starts going up. Now that you get your circadian rhythms off, you got everything off at that point in time, and you feel like wet garbage. Seriously. It's
Well,
nasty.
adrenals control your circadian rhythm.
Yes.
And we do see people that night shift workers, terrible adrenals, just because their body's confused. So it is better when somebody has a night shift to stay on the same schedule all the time to keep those rhythms better, because the whole body works on circadian rhythms. And they even know people that are routine with the same routines and rhythms actually have less health issues because it's better for you. So it is better for the body to have a routine.
Is there something that you can take to help keep them healthy, to help the process along?
Oh, no doubt about it. And we look at like when we do our spot testing, or if you do the big test that we just talked about, you know whether you need to boost them or whether you need to calm them down, depending on what's going on. And if you take the wrong thing, it's going to have an adverse reaction to you. So, knowing where you are knowing whether you need another quart of oil, so to speak, is the whole thing. You've got to know which way you're supposed to go, because if you don't, then you're going to have problems. Now, one of the biggies, and we get this all the time, but one of the biggies for actually keeping the adrenals functional is a good diet.
Yes.
Getting away from the packaged processed foods. Because people are getting way too much sugar, they're getting way too many.
Sugar is really bad for the adrenals, and it makes the adrenals, and then you crave sugar. Adrenal problems make you crave sugar, make you crave salt, makes all these other problems. But there is, like he said, you got to know which way to go too, because we have a supplement. Our Cortisol Soothe is one of our biggest sellers. It's for high cortisol, and it really does work. And then we have like our adrenal glandulars, that's for boosting it. And also you can talk about support. Supporting the adrenals is important. B vitamins, totally important for that. Pantothenic acid, completely important for that. There's adaptogens. And so, there's things that we use for different kinds of problems. And then when you have that pattern where it goes up and down through the day, you might need a few different combinations. And even something called maca root can actually help stimulate the adrenals, the whole endocrine system, actually. So there's things you can take. Now, we hadn't even mentioned a big part of what the adrenals make, and that's DHEA. DHEA is a hormone that's made in the adrenals. It is, they call it the aging hormone, because the older you get, the lower it goes, but the lower it goes, the older you get. So when you're DHEA, and we see a lot of really low DHEA even in young people with adrenal fatigue, or even when they're actually overproducing cortisol, basically their DHEA is, and helping with the DHEA helps handle stress better. That's one of the things that low DHEA does, is makes you not handle stress anymore. That's why you hear so many people that say as they get older, they don't handle stress like they used to. Well, it's because your DHEA always goes down as you age. Some people's go down way more than others. So that is another test. That is we do that on all of our tests. The DHEA and cortisol spot test are always done on all our panels. Now, like I said, the adrenal hormone stress profile also does the 6 different time cortisol and checks the DHEA as well.
Yeah.
But it does it in the saliva, which is free-formed. So it's a little bit, when you do it in the blood work, it's total. If you do it in the saliva, it's what you have usable.
Is that a fasting test?
No, because you do it all day long.
Got you.
Yep, you do it, so you do it from the minute you wake up till, Now they tell you not to eat an hour before each sample because they don't want food particles in it.
Well, there's that.
They don't want food particles in the spit that you give them.
Which
But
I could see could present
a problem,
an issue.
exactly.
Makes it a little tough, let's just put the cake and the cookies out of there, like, okay, get the,
Yeah, well, that's the sugar. See,
That's the
we
sugar,
keep going
right.
back. The devil is in the details. All right, we have a question here. Is there anything you can take to remove a kidney mass?
Well, you'd have to know what kind of mass it is first, but I would, just blanketly saying, I'm going to say probably not, other than surgery, because if it's a mass, and if it's a mass and it's benign, they're probably going to leave it alone.
Right.
If it's not, they're going to find out, and they may do something like a biopsy or something to find out, and if it's got any kind of malignancy to it, they're going to want to take it out. So,
yeah, but there's not just
saying,
something you can take and it makes a kidney mass go away.
No, not that I've ever seen.
Yeah. Now, you see the lipomas, which are the little fatty tumors that people pop up, and those do pop up in the kidneys as well. And I have had some people that had those, and the high-dose sunflower lecithin did actually help them shrink. So I don't know about remove. The only way to really remove something is to probably have surgery.
But you would still have to find out what that.
You got to find out what it is. Exactly.
That'd be step one.
Yeah.
Step one is to find out, and that means, you're going to have to go through the car wash, so to speak, and get all the testing done, and then to come out the other end, hopefully know what's going on. But I'd say that's the first step I'd tell you is, start with your primary care, work from there, and they're probably going to send you to a nephrologist, a nephrologist, a kidney specialist, and just go from there. And they got to find out what this is, what's causing it. Then you can do something about it.
Yeah, imagine that gets a little difficult unless you know exactly what you're dealing with. Even if there's a history of things like that in your family, you still got to know what's going on in your case.
It's the same thing with all of medicine, really. If you don't dig in to find the cause of what's going on, what kind of symptoms you have, then you're really just kind of treating symptoms. You're doing what we call whack-a-mole medicine. little mole, whack him, and you whack him again, because he's just going to keep popping up everywhere. And it's all these symptoms, and unfortunately, a lot of medicine today is symptom management. And that's all they do is just, and that's, unfortunately, because of the insurance company, the way these things done, that's all they can do. So don't beat your doctors up. They're doing the best they can.
Right.
Really. I'm Dr. Fox, and I want to thank you for watching this YouTube video. Be sure and hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell so you'll be notified on any upcoming videos that we have coming up. And thank you again for watching our YouTube videos.